Would it be fair to say that in Syria, the United States and those countries that were trying to oust Assad have essentially lost that struggle, and that the Russians, the Iranians who were backing the Assad government won?
So again, as I said, the regime is there to stay. None of us are talking to each other on what should be a narrative or a dialogue. I obviously understand from many countries their anger and concern of what has happened to the Syrian people. But keeping the status quo, where there's continued violence and the Syrian people pay the price, we've lived that for 7 or 8 years. So we have to admit that there is no perfect answer, but moving the dialogue forward in a coordinated way is better than just leaving it as it is.
So does that mean a de facto partition where Assad controls a large part of Syria, but there's a part that's almost a kind of badlands?
I think it's baby steps. And again, it's not just Iranian and proxies or the Russians that are there. ISIS is still there. They haven't been, they're defeated but not destroyed. That's something we've got to remember to chew gum and walk at the same time when it comes to this issue. But I think it's looking at the totality. At the moment, is there's such destruction in that country. The importance of building schools, of building hospitals, and giving a light. And it's not going to be anytime soon for Syrian refugees to say, okay, I can go back to something. There's nothing to go back to there. And so that's why I think we want to get away from violence and see if we can't look at rebuilding. A lot of that is going to be linked with political reform as far as I can see. And again, don't forget, and you're aware, the tragedy that is happening in Lebanon. And what happens in Lebanon or Syria are interlinked. With the crisis in Lebanon, and we're on the verge of a humanitarian disaster there, if that hasn't already happened, and the difficulties that the Syrian people are facing, we in Jordan could be facing another wave of refugees, God forbid. So these are issues that we need to deal with. If we ignore them, then it's going to take us by surprise.
Majesty, what has it been like meeting with Joe Biden compared to his predecessor? This is a very different president from the one we had before.
Well, I have fortunately had a very strong relationship with all presidents, and that is because my father taught me that you have to respect the office of the president, the head of state, and that's not just America. And my discussions have always been fruitful, done in mutual respect and understanding. President Biden I have known since I was a young man, visiting the Congress with my father when he was a young senator. So this is an old friendship. And I was just so delighted to see him in the White House. And I don't know what images came out, but my colleagues that were with me could just see the chemistry there. And my son has known the president, and as Joe Biden was the vice president, my son used to go and visit him at his house and in his office. So it's a family friendship.
Do you expect that you will get a different policy out of Biden than Trump?
Well, we've lost a couple of years, and part of it has obviously been the pandemic. And so it's not the issue of a different policy, it's more of what are the plans that are out there. I mentioned Syria, but also when we look at Lebanon, the crisis there, the people are suffering, starvation is just around the corner, the hospitals are not working, and a lot of discussions we've had here, and I know the Americans are working with the French, when the bottom does fall out, and it will happen in weeks, what can we do as the international community to step in? Knowing that whatever plans we come up with, we will fall short of our aims and we will let people down. So I think it's, can we build plans to sort of move the region into the right direction?
Let me ask you about stability in Jordan itself, because your country is often seen as a kind of island of stability in a very rough neighborhood. You've recently had what looked to the outside world like an attempted coup. What happened there, and what do you see as the prospects for any instability in the future?
Right. Well, again, when we look at crises all over the world, and I think in this day and age, we tend to look at crises as a snapshot, without really understanding the journey that actually, for example, Jordan has undertaken over the past several years. Regional instability, wars, refugees, COVID. And we've had to look at many characters that tend to use people's frustrations and legitimate concerns of challenges that they have in making their lives better, to really push on their own agendas and ambitions. What I think made this so sad, that one of the people was my brother, who did it in such an amateurish and really disappointing way. From our point, the intelligence services, as they always do, gather information, and it got to a point where they had legitimate concerns that certain individuals were trying to push my brother's ambitions for their own agendas, and decided, quite rightly, to nip it in the bud, and quietly. If it hadn't been for the irresponsible manner of secretly taping conversations with officials from Jordan, or leaking videos, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. And I believe that, I'm really proud when members of our family are successful, when they can reach out to society. Now, in this particular case, if somebody has certain ambitions, I can only do so much for them. But I believe, from a human point of view, it comes down to sincerity at the end of the day. It's very easy to use people's grievances for personal agendas. But are you sincere in what you're trying to do for your people? And at the end of the day, we all have a responsibility to be able to come up with solutions for the people. And this is not just Jordan-centric. Many royal families around the world have these challenges. If you're a member of the royal family, you have privileges. You need to respect those privileges, but also there are restrictions. The politics, at the end of the day, is the purview of the monarch. And so it's just unfortunate, unnecessary, and just created problems that we could have avoided.
One of the people who was part of it was very close to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Do you believe there was a Saudi hand in this? This is being looked at as a domestic issue. We all know that Bassem, who used to work in Jordan, is a senior advisor in Saudi Arabia. He holds a Saudi and American passport. We have witnessed external relations on this issue. But as I said, we're dealing with this as a domestic problem. And I think, again, knowing Jordan, finger pointing does not help at all. We have enough challenges in the region. We need to move forward. This has, I think, always been the Jordanian ethos to look to the future. And I think we're all about mitigating challenges and difficulties as opposed to adding to them.